Your thumb moves before you decide anything. Screen dark, pocket, hand, thumb, screen light. It happens in under 2 seconds, and you were not consulted. You were not bored exactly. You were not waiting for anything specific. The phone was simply there, and your hand went to it the way a tongue goes to a chipped tooth, an old, undeniable, wordless pull. You did not choose this. Something older than you did. The easy explanation is that phones are addictive, and you have weak willpower. That explanation is comforting because it makes the problem yours to fix with enough discipline. It is also wrong, or at least badly incomplete. The real question is not why phones are addictive. Researchers actually have a name for what you just did: reaching for a dark screen with no notification waiting and no specific reason. They call it spontaneous checking, opening the phone for no external trigger at all, just the pull of the object itself. The real question is what ancient system in your skull produces that pull, over and over, aimed at a piece of glass that did not exist 20 years ago. Because that system is not new. It is not even close to new. It was built for a world with no screens in it at all, and it still runs exactly the way it always did. Start with reward. Not the reward of getting something good, the reward of not knowing whether you will. In 1948, psychologist B.F. Skinner ran a now famous experiment with pigeons. He fed them at intervals that had nothing to do with anything the birds actually did. No lever, no behavior required, just food arriving on an unpredictable clock. The pigeons did something strange. They began repeating whatever motion they happened to be making right before the food appeared, head bobbing, turning in circles, as if their own actions had caused the reward. Skinner called it superstition in the pigeon, and it showed something important. Unpredictable reward alone, with no clear pattern behind it, was enough to hook an animal's behavior around it completely. Years later, Skinner and researcher Charles Furster mapped this out more precisely, describing what they called variable ratio reinforcement, a reward that arrives after an unpredictable number of tries. It is the same principle a slot machine runs on. Not because someone borrowed the idea from pigeons, but because both are exploiting the same feature of animal minds. Uncertainty is stickier than certainty. That circuitry did not appear for the first time in a laboratory pigeon, and it was not invented for a casino floor either. It is a foraging brain doing what foraging brains have always done. Ripe fruit is not distributed evenly across a forest. Prey is not guaranteed at the end of a track. An animal that forages, an ancestor of yours among them, is built to keep checking a promising patch, precisely because the patch does not pay out every time. The checking itself is the strategy. A brain that gave up after one empty branch would starve next to a tree that fruited the following week. A brain that kept returning, kept sampling, kept checking, survived, and passed that habit forward. That instinct is not a flaw. It is a finely tuned tool for exploiting unpredictable resources across a wide, uncertain landscape, and it does not know the difference between a fruiting tree and a notification screen. Both are patches, both might pay out, both are worth one more check, and one more after that. There is a second ancient system running underneath the first, and it has nothing to do with food, it has to do with people. For nearly the entire span of human existence, survival depended on knowing what your group was doing. Who was allied with whom, who was angry at whom, where danger had been seen, whether your standing in the group had shifted overnight while you slept. A person who stopped monitoring the social field for even a few days could return to find alliances rearranged, resources reallocated, threats unaddressed, their own place in the group quietly diminished. Anthropological work on small-scale societies consistently finds that an enormous share of daily conversation, often estimated at more than half of all spoken exchange, is devoted to exactly this kind of social information: who did what to whom, who can be trusted, who cannot. That is not gossip in the trivial, dismissive sense the word carries today. That was a survival instrument, as essential as tracking where the water was. A brain wired to crave social updates was a brain that stayed safely inside the group's protection, and a brain that ignored those updates was a brain slowly drifting toward the edge of it. Picture someone at the edge of an ancestral camp at dusk, work finished for the day, doing nothing in particular, and still their attention keeps drifting toward the sound of voices near the fire. They are not deciding to eavesdrop. They cannot help it. Some part of them is running a constant background check. Who is there? What is the mood? Has anything changed since this morning? Is there tension worth noticing before it becomes danger? That drifting attention was not idle curiosity, and it was not a character trait. It was the same system that now pulls your eyes toward a phone screen at a red light, checking not for danger exactly, but for status, for updates, for anything that might have shifted in the social field while you weren't looking. The fire has become a feed. The voices have become notifications. The instinct never noticed the substitution. Two ancient systems, then, running at once, often triggered by the same single glance at a screen. One built to keep checking unpredictable patches for food. One built to keep monitoring the social field for standing and safety. Neither one is broken. Both did exactly what they were supposed to do for hundreds of thousands of years, in a world where checking cost real effort, where a patch was miles away and a fire was one specific place you had to walk to, and where unpredictable payoffs were naturally rare because the world itself made them rare. There is a third piece to this, and it explains why the pull happens before the payoff, not after it. In the 1990s, neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz recorded individual dopamine neurons in monkeys while they learned that a cue predicted a reward. Dopamine is not simply a pleasure chemical, and it never was. It is deeply tied to motivation and to learning, and specifically to something researchers call reward prediction. When a reward arrives unexpectedly, dopamine neurons fire hard. But as the animal learns that a certain cue reliably comes before the reward, something shifts. The strong dopamine response moves earlier, toward the cue itself, toward the moment of anticipation, not the moment of payoff. Dopamine, in other words, helps drive the seeking, the reaching, the checking, before an animal has any idea what it will find. That is a large part of what fires when your thumb moves toward a dark screen, not only the content you eventually see, the pull of not yet knowing what is there. Stack these three systems on top of each other, the forager's patch checking, the tribe member's social vigilance, and the anticipation circuit that lights up hardest in the gap before an outcome is known, and you get something that looks, from the outside, exactly like compulsive phone checking. From the inside, it does not feel like compulsion at all. It feels like curiosity. It feels like nothing most of the time, which is exactly how a well-tuned survival instinct is supposed to feel. It is not supposed to announce itself. It is supposed to simply move your hand. Then came the rupture, and it is a recent one, measured in years rather than millennia. Unlike a fruiting tree, a notification feed does not run out of fruit. Unlike ancestral gossip near a fire, a social feed does not go quiet when everyone falls asleep, because someone on the other side of the planet is always awake and always posting. Modern feeds and notifications expose you to a constant stream of unpredictable rewards, an interesting post, a message, a like, arriving with no fixed pattern, creating the same kind of uncertainty that made variable reinforcement so hard for Skinner's pigeons to walk away from. That does not mean every app is a slot machine in some literal sense. It means these systems were built around features that can exploit the same psychological mechanisms that make unpredictable rewards so difficult to ignore: uncertainty, anticipation, and the pull of social feedback. Infinite scroll is one of those features. Unlike a natural environment, a digital feed has no inherent stopping point. There is always another post, another notification, another possibility of reward, one thumb flick away. Nobody needs to have mapped your neurons precisely for that design to work on you. It only needs to keep the patch feeling like it might pay out one more time. Your body was never built for a patch that never empties and a fire that never goes quiet. It was built for scarcity, for real gaps between real payoffs, for a social world small enough that you could realistically keep track of the important people in it, who mattered, who to trust, who had shifted toward or away from you. What you are holding in your hand right now is neither of those worlds. It is an unlimited patch and an unlimited fire fused into a single object that fits in your pocket, that lights up on its own without you asking it to, and that runs on design choices well suited to keep that ancient checking instinct engaged. This is why willpower alone rarely wins the fight people think they are having with their phone. You are not fighting a personal weakness. You are fighting motivational systems that spent hundreds of thousands of years being rewarded, generation after generation, for exactly the behavior you are now trying to suppress with a screen time limit or a moment of guilt. The checking is not a modern character flaw bolted onto an otherwise disciplined mind. It is one of the oldest instincts you carry, the same one that kept a forager alive near an unpredictable tree and a tribesperson safe inside a watchful camp, now aimed at a target that happens to be extremely good at holding it. So the thumb moves before you decide anything. Screen dark, pocket, hand, thumb, screen light. And it is not really you failing to control yourself. It is an ancient forager checking a patch that was built to never stop paying out. It is a social animal scanning a fire that was built to never go quiet. The craving is old, older than agriculture, older than language, older by far than the object triggering it. The supply is not old at all, and until you actually understand the mismatch between the two, no amount of guilt is going to close that gap for you.
If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one every week about ancient human behavior, about what your body still remembers, about the gap between the world you were built for and the one you actually live in. If that is something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive. See you in the next.